Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. As of today's video, we should be getting yet another update to Shadowlands beta. And hopefully with this update, we'll see some new rogue stuff. And I'll make sure to update you guys on everything that's available for rogues for the next video. But I get a lot of questions from you guys asking me what is the best covenant? What's looking really strong, and right now, what's looking really underwhelming? In this video, I want to go over all the different covenants and how they're feeling for rogues right now, as I've gotten a little bit of time to play all of them. Now that all of us decided to play rogues, time to choose your covenant, and there's 4 unique choices. But how truly good are they? I want to explore more than just abilities, but also some of the different soul buy-ins and some of the different gameplay elements that you are to expect. Again, not all of these have been balanced, and we're expecting for rogues to get quite a few upgrades before the beta is over. So let's take a look at where these covenants currently are right now in the early version of Shadowlands beta. Alright, we'll start this video off with the Fae. I normally would start this up with Kyrian or Maldraxxus or Necrolord, but I feel like Fae are very underrepresented. I don't know how many rogues are even going to play Fae because, well, the other covenants really do have really cool mods. Let's take a look at the Fae and their abilities. The first one is going to be Sepsis. It is a very interesting ability that would seem practical, however it does have some flaws. Sepsis, upon application, will do a bit of nature damage to an enemy, and then for the last bit, it should explode for a bunch of nature damage, stealthing the rogue. This is awesome because this gives rogues opportunities to re-stealth. This is cool for the playstyles for Assassination and Subtlety, but not really that much for Outlaw. But still, the damage is quite worth. It's actually quite big, or at least most of it should be. The dot tick itself is fine. The final burst of explosion of nature damage doesn't actually do anything. Right now, that damage is minuscule. It hits for 89, even at max level, and something hitting for 89 is like an auto attack basically in Shadowlands. So yeah, the final hit should be a lot bigger. It's supposed to be like a dot for maybe 1.5k, which is a decent number, and then an explosion between like 4 and 5k, which is huge. So this ability would actually be worth the 1.5 minute CD. What I found strength to this ability, particularly in dungeons, is if you're able to apply Sepsis and let the dot tick out almost to the final burst, but make it sure the enemy dies before the final burst, because this ability will actually be completely refreshed on CD if the enemy dies while Sepsis is on them. So you can kind of chain this dot onto enemies and it does quite a bit of damage, because right now the final burst of it just doesn't do anything. Speaking about the final burst and the actual re-stealth, this is very annoying to play with when it comes to leveling. In dungeons and raids, this won't be that bad because, well, the party will be in combat and you get a free re-stealth, which isn't a bad thing. But when you're leveling, this ability will automatically vanish you. You have a split second to ambush the enemy or hit him with any attack in order to keep him in combat, but you actually vanish from sight. So the enemy has a high chance of just resetting. The way I would fix this ability if I were Blizzard is I would make it so that it's like incarnation for feral druids. When Pharaohs pop Incarn, they get a buff and they can re-stealth while this buff is up at any moment. Sepsis should do the same thing. It should give you an opportunity for the rogue to control the re-stealths if they want to use one. This way, if you're questing, you don't need to re-stealth at all, so you don't drop the aggro of the mob. Or if you do need to re-stealth because you made a mistake doing Torghast, it could still give you the opportunity. Or let's say in PvP, you can re-stealth at an earlier time just because while Sepsis is running. You might want to put it up in case you get low, or in case you're going to go for a vanish Riga Road on an enemy or something like that. I think that would be a lot better. Otherwise, this ability is kind of cool. The second ability you get is to turn yourself into a fox form, and in Ardenwald with the Fae Covenant, you'll eventually be able to change that form cosmetically. The form for fox is kind of like a ghost wolf with a short teleport forward. It's a very short blink and a very short cooldown. So rogues being as mobile as we are, usually you would want to shadow step to an enemy or grapple hook. I guess if you have none of those tools, you can fox form to the enemy, but it's not quite as good because rogues are so mobile. However, you can modify this ability with soul binds, and they got some interesting soul binds for rogues. You can modify this ability so you can give movement speed to allies when this form ends or when it begins. You can also gain a re-stealth if you're, let's say, out of combat. When this ability drops, you can catch a free reset a lot easier, which could be used in PvP. And you can also change it to be a charge, so you can kind of add an extra stun and use this ability to like off stun a secondary target if your kidney shot is down. Then the other abilities available for some of the Fae Soul Binds can give you opportunity to give nature damage on an enemy when you interrupt them. You also have a cheat death, which is an interesting mechanic ability. You have a bit of this execute window when enemies get low, and if an ally near you falls, like in arenas, you might be able to use that execute to kind of finish off an enemy because it'll be giga buffed for a short moment. There's a lot of cool abilities that Fae bring in, and a lot of them have a little bit of this hybridness nature to them, as the fairies do play tricks. So if you want to be a trickster rogue, I feel like they have a few abilities that feel and fold into that playstyle. There's tanky options, more healy based options, as well as more offensive options. So there's a variety of different soulbinds for a rogue to choose. When it comes to the Girion Covenant, the ability itself seems like it doesn't do a lot, but it actually has pretty big impact. It's an ability called Echoing Reprimand. Basically, the rogue slashes with their weapons at an enemy doing a bit of arcane damage, and also marks a combo point on your combo point bar that will be anima charged. Next finisher that uses the same combo point set as the anima bar, so let's say if it gives you 3 combo points, the next 3 combo point finisher will act like a 7 combo point finisher. Now, this ability on its own isn't going to do that much damage, but the actual combo point increase for your finisher does seem quite substantial. The burst damage you can put out does feed back into it, so when you look at damage and looking for this ability to do a lot of deeps, it's not really going to do a lot of deeps from that regard, but the buff it provides you is quite cool. The ability itself in the fairly short cooldown doesn't really cost that much energy, and also generates 3 combo points. So for a rogue to line up your setup for burst or maybe CC in PvP, it does give you free CP, which is quite cool. This ability isn't bad, and in some cases I would even say it's actually kind of underrated. A lot of people look at this ability in particular and don't really treat it all that seriously, but it's an actual meaningful threat. A sub-rogue with this ability can go for a massive eviscerate, or you can go for a longer duration rupture that maybe does more damage or more envenom damage. For an outlaw, it's a bigger dispatch, or if it crits, a much bigger between the eyes with a longer cooldown or longer window for the debuff that it applies when you're trying to maintain your defensive debuff. This isn't going to give you a 7 combo point kidney shot by any chance, so don't worry about anything broken like this. And it doesn't look like it works for slice and dice either. It simply works for abilities that are used to damage an enemy that take combo points. So any abilities that spend combo points through talents, I think will also apply. The second ability will let you summon a steward. A steward is kind of like this owl boy, and he will let you change talents if you're out of combat. And even in certain dungeons, he actually has some certain key abilities that you wouldn't be able to do unless you are Kyrian. So especially in Necrotic Wake, when you see massive giant robots everywhere, grab your Kyrian steward friend and have him repair one of those robots, and you'll provide a party buff for your group, which is kind of unique. The Kyrian guy will give you a vial that will heal you for 15% of your health. Does not DR with healing potions or health stones, so it's a separate health stone in its own wake, but also it cleanses you off of all negative effects minus the magic ones. So diseases, poisons, bleeds, anything that you would finding annoying in PvP or PvE, basically everything Cloak can't handle. This ability can also be upgraded through their soulbinds, and they have quite a good amount of soulbinds there as well. You have stat increases like Mastery and Versatility, but the Kyrian one, what I noticed, are more cut and dry when it comes to DPS, healer, and tank. Or I guess I would call it DPS utility and tanky kind of setups. So for a tank ability, you'll have a basic heal and a lot of baseline tank abilities. For a utility-based thing, you might have a stun on AoE when you drop low, an opportunity to summon another combat ally to fight for you. And for DPS, you have the very simplistic DPS options to just make you do more damage. So these guys, in terms of soulbinds, are going to be more cut and dry. You will know which ones you will want to use in different situations. So if you're the rogue, let's say, going to be hammered in arenas, you'll go for a tanky option. But let's say if you do dungeons or raids, there's going to be a more DPS option. A lot of these can be swapped around, and there's some diversity between how you can craft your rogue, but these ones are more cut and dry, which are good if you want a more simplistic setup for your soulbinds and the passives you play with. Then we have the Necrolord Covenant, and I won't beat around the bush with you guys. This one seems to be the strongest of all of them right now. At least currently, it seems like it is way miles ahead of all the other abilities, almost like it's overpowered, and the other ones are maybe underpowered. This ability does a lot of damage, and it's also quite versatile. So you have 3 charges of Bone Spike. When you throw a Bone Spike at an enemy, it doesn't really cost that much energy to begin with, and it generates a combo point. Then it'll do a bit of physical damage on the enemy, and it'll put up a dot that stays on an enemy permanently. So you could just put up a dot on an enemy that's a player, like a rogue or anything that's not a mage or a paladin that can immune it, because it is a physical debuff. You're just stuck with it forever, it looks like. And it can be used in dungeons as well as raids. So this dot will last forever. This ability has 3 charges, so you can throw 3 bone spikes in a row. each will generate a common point. However, the bone spike actually generates more common points for each debuff that's already out. So let's say you have a boss fight with 3 or 4 adds. You, let's say, will debuff one enemy with a bleed, debuff the second one with a bleed, and debuff the third one with a bleed. Every bleed that's active generates an extra common point. So let's say if you have a 5 boss raid for whatever reason, then every single throw of Bone Spike will generate 5 common points in a single global. And it costs like, what, 10 energy or something like that? It's very, very low energy cost and quite a lot of value for the damage that it offers. So this one seems like the strongest because it basically does gushing wounds worth of damage and it doesn't ever fall off. It does quite a ludicrous amount of dot damage on any enemy that it applies on, and the common point generation that it gives you on top of it just makes it an insanely strong option. Far better than everything that we have available. So hopefully we'll see this ability toned down. Maybe the other ones will be buffed, maybe this one will be nerfed, but it really doesn't feel like it should be doing nearly as much damage. I mean, a single finisher of yours can do about 1,000 damage, and this ability takes for 1,000 every few seconds. Seems a little busted in my opinion. The second ability is Fleshcraft. It allows you to consume the souls of nearby enemies, but even if there's none, it'll still apply a shield to you that will shield you for a portion of your health. I think it's like 20% of your health. So that creates for a sizable shield. If there's any other enemies near you when you use this ability, the shield can be increased up until a certain point. If you strike elite enemies or powerful enemies, it'll give you slightly more into the absorb. And this ability is what will be modified through your soul binds. You can make the shield stronger. You can make the shield come back to you faster. You can make the shield give you immunity to CC as long as the shield is up, which could be useful in PvP as well as in PvE. I've already found some boss fights where this can be cheesed. But the rest of the other abilities available for the soul binds will give you maybe like a cheat death mechanic where, let's say, when you die, you'll be reanimated, or at least your armor will be reanimated. And you'll do 50% less damage, 50% less healing. You can be healed, but you can still fight just a little longer. So if you just get stomped in an arena, you can come back for 10 extra seconds and see if you can just have a comeback at the enemy or something like that. And then there's another one that plays with your shieldcraft as well and gives you a stacking buff that can give you more healing when you use the shieldcraft, kind of to be using shieldcraft in combat more or less. There are some unique things available for Necrolords as well, like when you drop below 20% health, you actually AoE fear enemies with certain soul binds. But it feels like most of the Necrolord stuff, the actual Covenant abilities are so strong that the rest of the soul binds for Necrolords are just not nearly as strong. So maybe that's going to be the biggest draw for Necrolords. You have a very powerful ability, but the passives have some usages here and there, but they're not going to be like anything crazy or incredible except for that, you know, no CC while the shield remains type of deal. That one seems really strong. But maybe that's kind of the direction Blizzard is going. Maybe certain abilities will be nerfed, but the passives will be buffed, and maybe Blizzard will allow for different passives in the future. Only time will tell. Finally, we have Venthyr with the ability of Slaughter. Slaughter is an interesting one, as it's a kind of an ambush opener for you, and when you use the Slaughter ability at the start, generates 2 common points, costs same energy as ambush, it will apply Slaughter Poison to your character, which will replace your instant or deadly poison. This poison does shadow damage, and it does about the same damage as deadly poison, but for your Outlaw or for your subtlety, this is a damage increase, while for Assassination, seemingly right now, it actually doesn't do more damage, it just does the same. But Assassination, for whatever reason, does not recognize that poison as a poison, so you don't get the venomous wound self-regen rolling. So hopefully Blizzard fixes that in the future. This poison applies a shadow debuff on the enemy that ticks down on him, but also it leeches and actually steals 15% of target's health. In a sense, it's like an instant poison dot version plus wound poison combined, because wound poison will reduce the amount of healing the enemy takes. This poison, instead of reducing it and sending all that 50% of healing done into the nether somewhere, it actually gives it back to the rogue, so it actually does do the steal mechanic, which I feel like kind of plays into this rogue playstyle of stealing things, you know, rogue sneaking around, pickpocketing, and here you're just literally stealing healing that somebody else can get. This ability is more of a passive one. It doesn't actually have any active components, you just got to make sure you get the opener. And this ability I would actually change, so instead of using the Slaughter opener, I would actually change it so that it was just a Slaughter poison. Because in PvP, I think it would be a lot better if you didn't have to open with an ambush, and you could open up with a cheap shot. Like, let's say that's your normal rogue opener, you open with a cheap shot, build some common points, throw him in a kidney. With this ability, you will not be able to do so, so you're not going to open up with Slaughter, vanish, wait for resets, and then open up with a cheap shot. That would be weird. That, or make the Slaughter Poison a 1 hour long buff instead of 5-minute long buff. Because then before any arena or before any dungeon, I'll just use Slaughter on a critter or something in order to maintain my poison for the next bit of combat. Also, I think this ability should be buffed a little. It does seem to do some sort of a damage increase for Sub and Outlaw, but not a massive one. For Assassination, it actually just doesn't work at all, so I would like to see, even though it's a passive ability, have a massive increase in terms of the damage for all 3 specs. Second part of this Venthyr Covenant is now an ability called Doorway of Shadows, or Doorway to Shadows. They changed this ability name a couple times. But basically, you do a teleport to a set location, kind of like a heroic leap with a cast time. And your Covenant abilities and your conduits and soulbinds can alter this ability in a variety of ways. For example, when you reappear next to an enemy, you can now disorient them for 6 seconds. So let's say your blind is on cooldown, you can add extra CC. Or maybe use this ability to get rid of roots and snares, or give you movement speed, or have 2 charges of it so you can have a lot more mobility around the map. So it's interesting how you can alter this ability to give you a variety of buffs or even a shield and stuff like that. As for how the soulbinds compare to the other covenants, these all seem aggressive. Like, you want to be a tank, but you still want to be very aggressive and into enemy's face, chasing after them. This covenant can easily let you do that. The offensive one gives you even a bit of a bloodlust buff the longer you stay in combat with an enemy, and as you slay enemies, it'll give you that bloodlust buff a little bit quicker, also with a bit more emphasis on the mobility. Again, very aggressive. The healing option, or the utility option, quote unquote, none of these are really set in stone, you can use it as anything you want to, but the utility guy right now is a little bit broken. He doesn't have his final ability in yet. At some point it was actually cheat death, which was busted because it gave you no debuffs. You just came back from cheat death every 5 minutes or something. So Blizzard is reworking what that will be. But a lot of the abilities and passives I find to be a little aggressive in terms of the playstyle it offers. Like a healer chasing after the DPS in PvP, beating them up instead of the other way around. So I think that's kind of what you are to expect with some of the conduits available for Venthyr. But I really gotta say the teleport ability is really cool, and I think a lot of people are gravitating towards it when it comes to PvE/PvP. That mobility can go a very long way. Anyway, this is going to be my video on the different covenants for rogues right now. With this Wednesday reset, we're hopefully going to get some more updates for rogues, like legendaries, conduits, and even more updates to some of these abilities. Maybe complete reworks. So maybe this video will be mute by the time the Blizzard releases this update. But these are the abilities that we have right now. These are the different covenants we have. And it's hard for me to lie to you guys. One of them simply just seems stronger, which is going to be the one on Maldraxxus currently. But this is early beta, so this is likely to change in the future. There's probably going to be reworks for some of the rogue abilities because some of them do seem much stronger than others. However, there is some possibility for one ability, let's say, being not too strong, but the utility side and the soulbinds are amazing, while another might have insane ability, but the soulbinds and utilities are lackluster. So we never really know where Blizzard is going to go with it. But we'll have to wait and see. Definitely some adjustments need to be made, bugs need to be fixed for these abilities, but all of them seem quite good and competitive depending on the situation, in a way. Or at least if I were to imagine these abilities in the final form, how would they perform? And right now there is a pretty big gap between all of them. You know, Maldraxxus one's winning by a mile, but if they all were balanced closer to one another and actually work properly, they all could be really quite good choices for rogues going forward. Again, early beta, so this isn't a finalized build, but I want to share with you guys my opinions on some of these abilities. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know which covenant is looking most exciting for you guys if you are trying to play a rogue in the next expansion, and I'll see all of you in another video.